You are live. Start from the beginning. The next 2 weeks, we are really going to hit home a process, a conceptual process that my students are going to have, and you're going to be able to have it and use it for the rest of your life. My students, we are not going to play fast and loose with muscles. We're not going to do things like core and glutes and quads and hams and trunk, and that's just randomly shooting bullets metaphorically at a target and hoping something hits. I'm going to teach you how to see specifically which muscles we need, because we understand why we specifically need those muscles. The first parts of class was spent understanding motion. All the different motions we have, the illusions of motion. Muscles influence motion through the context of contraction, which we talked about a couple of weeks ago. What I want to reiterate is that this is nothing you haven't seen before in high school or basic college physics. Let me turn the camera. And that is the work equation. Force and distance is work, right? And you can have negative work and positive work. You remember that? It's force and distance. So all we're saying is that muscles do work, right? When you're lifting weights, when you move, when you're folding clothes, you're moving things, you're changing things. And so mechanically, we've been introduced to this. Biomechanically, I'm just showing you that we can apply it this way as well. Don't pay any attention to the plus or the multiplication. It's just meant to be a relationship. That's all. There's no units. It's just a relationship. Muscles will influence our motions through the context of contractions. And in work, we have positive work and negative work. You know, like you remember this in high school. Like if I lift something up off of the ground and the force that I'm applying is in a positive direction and the movement is in the positive direction, I get positive work on the ream of paper. But if my force on the paper is in the positive direction, but I let the paper go down, that's negative work, right? Because the motion was in the opposite direction of the force that was influencing. Guys, that's what contractions are. Concentric and eccentric is our versions of positive work and negative work. But it's not necessarily based off of just up and down. It's based off of which groups of muscles are doing a job. Who is pulling? Because I'm going to teach you how to understand why they're pulling. And then once you establish your agonist, the muscles who are pulling to do a job. Chance, remember when we did the manual muscle test, right? And I was like, don't let me push you down. Don't let you were 100%. Your body knew exactly who to recruit because you knew why to recruit them. You didn't sit there thinking, do I need my pec? Do I need my posterior? Your body already knows all this stuff. So once we establish the agonist based off of their direction of pull, then the motion will help us to show the contraction. For example, I'm doing curls. Gravity in this case is trying to extend me. I don't need tricep, anconeus, and other extensors. I would hurt my elbow, right? Gravity's already trying to extend you. You need biceps, brachialis, brachioradialis, pronator teres. You need these other muscles that are pulling in a direction of flexion. If gravity is an extension puller, I need muscles who are flexion pullers. So that is my force. My muscle force is my agonist that's influencing motion, pulling in a direction of flexion. So the work equation just basically says, if I actually observe flexion, in other words, the motion that those muscles are pulling in, wouldn't that be positive work? Moving in the direction that you're trying to move. Moving in the direction of pull. Creating motion in the direction of the agonist. But if my flexors are agonists, because I see that gravity is trying to extend me, I need flexion pullers, and I observe extension, it's not because the extensors, it's still because of those flexors. Those flexion pullers are allowing the extension, just like I let the book go down. I didn't push the book down. I let the book go down while I was still pushing up, true? So the elbow flexors allow the extension through an eccentric contraction, or our version of negative work. Why do you think they call them negatives? It's a play off of the work equation. That's an example. We are going to first start off with identifying agonists, specifically isometrically. We're going to start off easy. Isometric is easy. That's what we did with the manual muscle test. Trying to identify who's working because we ask ourselves, why do they need to work? If gravity is trying to adduct my shoulders, I don't need adduction pullers. I need abduction pullers. Who are those muscles? Who cares right now? It doesn't matter. I'm going to teach you those muscles in 415. But you know what we got to get away from? Saying the pecs and the glutes, because different pecs don't pull in the direction that we may need. Some pecs influence just scapula. They don't influence shoulder at all. Some glutes don't just pull in the direction of the gluteus maximus. We have gluteus medius and minimus and anterior fibers of the gluteus medius and minimus. I'm going to teach you all that stuff in 415. I need to get you out of the habit of just identifying 5 muscles in the body. The glutes and the quads and the core. I mean, think about it. If you're doing a plank on your right side, common sense says you'd be working different muscles than you're working if you're doing a plank on your left side. True? But you know what? Most people will just say core. And they do that because they don't know which muscles they're working, because it's not easy to see. You guys will see. I'm going to teach you how to specifically identify, oh, if I'm on my right side, I'm working my left lateral trunk benders or my left lateral trunk bending pullers. And in biomechanics, I'm going to teach you how to identify those muscles. Everything on the, if you're on your right side, you're working your right laterals. Everything on the right side of the belly button, right rectus, right external, right internal, right erector spinae. But who's in the group comes after identifying the group. That's the key. I need to teach you how to see that I need my left laterals, my right laterals, my trunk flexors, my trunk extensors, my elbow flexors, my elbow extensors, my abductors, my flexors, my extensors. And that's just with gravity. There's machines and exercises. And sometimes they get tough when we're talking about rotating the trunk and having pelvic girdle motion with trunk motion. That's why we practice. So the most important thing right now is identifying agonists. Agonists are muscles that are being recruited above resting tone to do a job. Your cervical extensors are agonists right now. Because if they weren't pulling in a direction of cervical extension, your head would bob forward. I see it all the time at 7:30 in the morning. I understand. But think about it. They're doing a job to keep your head upright, to keep your eyes level. No wonder your neck hurts at the end of the day. They've been working all day. If you were going to lay on your right side, you would just need your right lateral pullers to prevent your head from flopping over to the right. So you need your left lateral. I keep seeing myself in the computer. It's mirroring. It's freaking me out. Don't look at the screen again. If I'm laying on my left side, gravity's trying to do this. I need muscles that are pulling here. If I'm forward, gravity's trying to do this. I need muscles that are pulling here. If I'm leaning back, gravity's trying to do this. I need muscles that are pulling there. Pretty simple. We just have to give them names based off of their direction of pull. Practice. We just did an exam on shoulder. What motion is that TheraBand trying to do to her right shoulder? Internal rotate. So abduction would be like this, right? Now, that's actually not a bad observation. The reason we put the towel underneath is when they're moving, they're like, ooh, hand go out, hand go out, hand go out. I totally could do abduction, but then the towel's gonna fall, right? That's not you. You gave a good logical deduction. I should have clarified rotation. Is it trying to internally rotate me or externally rotate? Good. Do I need muscles that are trying to internally rotate me? No. Does that make logical sense? You already have something that's trying to internally rotate you. If I used muscles that did the same thing, I'd be throwing the band across. True? I need external rotation pullers. Who are those muscles? Who cares? Know that you have muscles that pull in every direction of motion. We have to. Every direction of motion, we have muscles that pull into. Biomechanics, I'm going to teach you about the infraspinatus, the teres minor, the posterior fibers of the deltoid. But you don't have to. If I say teres minor, does that suggest how it pulls? No, it's just a name given to something based on Latin. There's only a few muscles in the body that have their pull in their name. Pronator teres, pronator quadratus. You have a muscle called the supinator. Love those. Very few. They just have names, usually Latin. Some of them are based off of origin insertion, but their name doesn't tell you what they do. Just like the name Johnny Boudreaux doesn't say that person might be a fireman. Right? We can't go straight to specific muscle names. We can't. Because these specific muscle names don't infer their jobs. How they pull. So this exercise would be working external rotators. And I know because the TheraBand's trying to internally rotate me. Pretty simple. For now, we're just going to start off isometrically. Isometrically, she's holding this position probably to take the photo, right? Hold that position to take the photo. But once we establish the agonist in an exercise, it's like the game Clue, where you got to figure out who did it, where they do it, how they do it, like Professor Plum with the candlestick in the library. I don't know if y'all played that game. The first step is figuring out who's doing the work, because you understand why they need to do the work. The second step is what we've been practicing, motion. So in this exercise, eventually I'm going to say, okay, this exercise is working my external rotators, my external rotation pullers. That's my agonist. Those muscles pull in the direction of external shoulder rotation. So if I observe external rotation during that range of motion, external rotators do external rotation with positive work, right? With concentric contraction. Doing what they're trying to do, creating movement in their direction of pull. We're going to say, well, what happens if you observe internal rotation in this exercise? Well, I still know the external rotators are at agonist because that band is still trying to internally rotate me. But if my external rotators are working and I observe internal rotation, you see how the motion's different than the direction of pull? Negative work. That's what an eccentric contraction is, ladies and gentlemen. I mentioned this a couple weeks ago. The main thing that I need you guys to understand is that just because I observe a specific motion doesn't mean I'm working specific muscles. That's not how muscles work. I'm not working shoulders on the way up and lats on the way down. I'm working shoulders on the way up and shoulders on the way down. I could do an exercise that would work lats. But guess what? If I'm doing a lat pull down, I'm working lats on the way down and lats on the way up, right? If the bar is trying to pull me up. Same external force in an exercise, you're going to be working the same agonist. The changes in motion isn't because of different muscles. It's because of different contractions. I'm going to say that about 4 times. For an exercise, same external force. And what I mean by that is that TheraBand is trying to internally rotate her whole range of motion. True. Isn't it trying to internally rotate her, the whole range of motion? So she's going to need external rotators, the whole range of motion. Same external force, same agonistic group. The changes in motion isn't because of different muscles. It's because different contractions of the same muscle. Concentric, eccentric, concentric, eccentric. Yes? Let's do another one. We're looking at right hip. We analyze motion joint by joint. We analyze muscles joint by joint. Right hip. What is gravity trying to do to his right hip? Outstanding. Abduct. Abduct. You can do a thought experiment. What if he turned off all the muscles in his hip? Fall down. And what motion is that? Abduction. Does that make sense? There is no situation on earth where he needs his abductors to hold that position. If he used muscles that pull in the same direction as gravity, he would slam his leg to the ground. Make sense? Common sense? Gravity's trying to abduct him, so to maintain that position, he would need adductors. Who are those muscles? Who cares? I just know I have muscles that pull in the direction of adduction, just like I have muscles that pull in the direction of every motion that I have. In 415, I'm going to teach you about the gracilis. I'm going to teach you about the pectineus. I'm going to teach you about the adductor brevis, longus, and magnus. I love those guys because they have the direction of pull in their name. I wish they all did. Isometrically, those adductors are going to work to prevent any kind of motion, to maintain that position. Concentrically, those muscles are going to work to create the adduction to get him to that position. And eccentrically, those muscles are going to allow, you see what I'm saying? Allow the abduction. Adductors allow abduction through a negative type of work, eccentric contraction. Muscles that pull in allow motion going out through eccentrics. Starting to get in the habit? Think of it like this. This person has to make his leg come up, but gravity can make the leg go down. You have to concentrically come up and then let the leg go down. You have to make it add and let it ab. It's not different muscles, and that's what I'm trying to teach you. There are students who don't watch this stream. I'm not talking to you guys because you're watching the stream, who are going to think that I'm working adductors up and abductors down. I've been doing this way too long to not see it happen every semester, because in their brain, any muscle is because of any specific motion. In their minds, I'm doing bicep up and tricep down. And I think we've established that I'm doing bicep up and bicep down. That's how elevators move you. They pull up to make you go up. They pull up to keep you from falling down. And they pull up while they let you down. Both movements was because of something that was pulling in the same direction. Yes? Let's do a comment. Oh, boy, do not like this name of this machine. Guys, we have to remember, we are learning concepts that in activities of daily living, we have been hearing and applied bad verbiage our whole lives. It's not our fault. It's not, but anybody can go, and they should be able to go in a weight room and do this exercise. But not everybody understands the concepts of agonists and motion and contractions. So you have to call this something, just like we got to call muscles names. So what do we call it? The leg extension machine. I'll tell you why that's a problem for our world. Because you flex just as much as you extend on this machine, if you think about it. So what happens is, this is an illusion. Leg extension machine works quads. Leg extension machine works quads. Leg extension machine works quads. And it gets in our brain so much that anytime we see extension, we want to think it's quads. Let's not say quad, because quad is orbital. What does a quad do? In biomechanics, I'm going to teach you our vasti groups, medialis, lateralis, intermedius, and our super awesome rectus femoris that crosses the hip and the knee. Quad doesn't say what these muscles do, which is how they pull. That machine, the padding on the machine, right? Because you have the weight stack. Because of pulleys, they redirect the force from the weight stack, and the padding is pushing on the front of the leg, right? What direction of motion is that padding trying to do to his knees? Flex. Yeah, that machine's trying to flex it. I don't need flexion pullers if the machine's trying to flex me. I need extension pullers. And yes, the quad is an extensor, but if you just say quad, it takes out what it's doing, how it's pulling. We're going to use that verbiage in biomechanics once I teach you how to see muscles for what they do. I need, no pun intended, knee extensors in this exercise, regardless of if I'm flexing or extending. Does everybody understand that? The machine is trying to flex me regardless of my range of motion. Does everybody see that? The machine is trying to flex me as I flex. The machine is trying to flex me as I extend. Does everybody see that? The machine's not changing what motion it's trying to do to my knees. So therefore, I'm not going to change what muscles are trying to do to my knees. Same external force. Same agonistic group. The changes in motion is because of the changes of that muscle group's contraction type. Concentric and eccentric. My agonists in this exercise are my knee extensors. We all agree because we understand what the machine's trying to do to us. If I observe knee extension pullers do knee extension through concentric contraction. Positive work. That would be this. Concentric contraction. But what I need you guys to see, and I know you will, I need you guys to see and understand that this is the same muscles as this. There's going to be people on the test that say quad, and then they're going to say hamstring. And the reason they're going to say that is if they're going to say motion, they're going to say, well, wait, isn't this flexion? And aren't you working your hamstrings on like a hamstring curl? That's flexion. Their instinct is to want to match up a specific muscle with a specific motion. That's not how muscles work. We're starting to see the illusions here. Flexion during this exercise would be my knee extensors through eccentric contraction. The extension during this exercise would be knee extensors through concentric contraction. Why is contraction understanding so important, guys? It's going to be so important for what most of you guys are going to do for a living. First of all, it's important for everybody. There's going to be indications and contraindications for people recovering from injury, people who are returning to CrossFit, athletes who are returning, and you're going to start off sometimes just doing isometric stuff. Sometimes you just want to do the concentric phase. Sometimes you just want to do eccentric phase. Kind of have to know how to set these variables up, okay? We're not just going to play fast and loose. What if somebody has a strain to a specific oblique? Don't you kind of have to know when you're working it and when you're not? You can't just do random things to work the core. Right? We have to specifically know how to target certain muscles because we either need to or we don't need to. Okay, let's do the opposite of this one. Let's do the old hamstring curl. And maybe this will really emphasize what we're talking about. Yoink. Look at this. Look how close. What was one of our commandments in class? Do not what? What do I ask you not to do? Starts with an A. Assume. Yeah. So here is an exercise that looks a lot like our leg extension machine. I mean, you're in a seated position. There's a padding there. But that padding's not trying to flex your knees. What's that padding trying to do? Extend your knees. So if the padding is trying to extend me, do you think I need extension pullers? What would I need? Flexors. Flexors, muscles that pull in the direction of flexion. Flexion pullers, good. Now, again, I love to teach through repetition. Campbell, why don't you just say hamstrings? First of all, that word doesn't infer how they pull. Second of all, what about the gastrocnemius? What about the sartorius? What about the gracilis? What about the popliteal? There's other muscles involved besides just semimembranosus, tendinosus, and biceps femoris. We need to understand this. We need to understand that this exercise is working flexion pullers because the machine or the exercise itself is trying to extend it. Once I establish that I'm working flexion pullers, now my motion is going to prove to me my contraction. That's the elegance of this simple little equation. Once you identify your agonist, literally your motion will prove your contraction. If I'm working flexors and I observe flexion, concentric contraction. Flexors, when they're working, are going to do flexion, movement in their direction of pull, but only through concentrics. Shortening while trying to shorten above resting tone. You have a question? Flexors are working in this exercise. If I observe extension, a movement opposite the direction of pull, flexors allow extension, but only through eccentric contraction. That's what we call a negative. Identifying the negatives, guys, are very important. That's where you're going to get your most muscle damage. That's where you're going to get your most strength gains. Probably talked about that in physiology. We'll talk about it more in biomechanics. I'm not saying go off and do eccentrics, but understanding these different components of a range of motion, really important. If he's not moving and he's just holding this position for the photo, what type of contraction would that be? Those are the easiest ones. You shouldn't miss any, and I'm going to ask some, but you should be like, I hope Campbell asked 22 isometric questions. But think about it. Establish the agonist. You can base it off of isometric. What I mean by that is the elevator could be going up or down and always just stop. But you can see what gravity's trying to do to the elevator the whole time. So if we're doing a range of motion, just stop and establish what the machine's trying to do to you. Establish what muscles you need to work to do to you. Establish the isometric and then say, press pause and say, go. My knee flexors are working. I'm not quite sure the contraction, flexion, extension. Pause. Machine's trying to extend me. I need flexors. Now I know if I see flexion, it's concentric. And if I see extension, it's eccentric. But did you see how we did two different exercises that were two different agonists that had different contractions for different motions? Because we can't just say extension is this muscle and flexion is that muscle. We have to have the context. Identifying the agonist is literally what is the exercise or the machine trying to do to you? And I need muscles that are pulling in the other way. Oh, I don't like these words. That's what Google knows. Why do you think I don't like the word tricep extension exercise? Why do you think I don't like that word? Yeah, exactly. It makes people, well done. If you say tricep extension, tricep extension, tricep extension, it imprints in your head, when I see extension, it's because of tricep. But, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just a humble little boy from Delphi. But wouldn't we be working tricep from left to right? And wouldn't that be flexion? So how does a tricep, who's an extension puller, be responsible for flexion? Eccentric contraction. Eccentric contraction. There are going to be students on the test that swear that I'm working bicep going down and tricep coming up. And I'm not making fun of those people. That's a logical assessment based off of tricep extension, bicep curl, like associating the muscle with the motion. But that's why I'm hoping you guys are listening to me while I'm trying to teach you how muscles work so that you don't make that mistake. And I tell you this, I'm going to ask this question on the test. I'm going to ask this question on the test. And if everybody gets it right, I'll curve the overall class grade. That's how confident I am in my position. You tell GroupMe, tell your friends, tell your neighbors, make a sign, pizza party, don't care. That's how powerful. And you know what it is too, is a lot of times when students come into my class, they've had years, we've all done it, guys. We've played sports, we've been involved in dancing, we have done human movement our whole lives. So we have a lot of bad habits. I was the same way. And I think one of the reasons there's so few people in here in the mornings outside of, at 7:30 in the morning, I understand, is people like, I already know this stuff. I'm certified personal trainer, me. Muscles influence motion through contraction. Where's my concentric phase, you guys? What motion would I see when those muscles are working concentrically? Right to left or extension in this example, right? So notice, I'm not saying it's going to be concentric every time you see extension. I'm establishing the context of gravity's trying to flex me. I need extension pullers. Guess what? It's more than just the tricep. The tricep is an extension puller. The KNES is an extension puller. You got some extension pullers outside of tricep. Michael Jordan won 6 championships, but he had other players on the team. Just another way to look at it. get me started about basketball, man. The Pelicans let me down. Does everybody understand? This exercise is working extensors. And when I observe extension, those muscles are going to be working concentrically. And when I observe flexion, those same muscles are going to be working eccentrically. Yes? And do y'all understand that I'm going to ask this on the test? And if anybody puts flexors going down and extensors going up, we don't curve. So y'all got a 2-week head start to let everybody in your class know. All right, somebody give me, we analyze motion joint by joint. We analyze muscles joint by joint. Somebody give me a joint, not like that. Somebody give me an articulation of the body that we haven't done yet. We've done knees, we did a shoulder. Nothing crazy, we want to start off easy. We did a hip. All right, I'll do one. What's that? Ooh, we just did an elbow. Yeah, for the.
Do your ankle? No.
Let's do it. Good one. Yoink. Great. Great, great, great. Let's take a look at this one. Therabands, just like muscles, only pull. I love, after doing this for so long, you get like ropes only pull. What if you freeze it? Stop it. Sounds like my son, always looking for exceptions. Of course, that was his dad, always looking for exceptions to the rule. We're going to get into some exceptions to the rule next week. You know what the exceptions to the rules are? It's not that there's exceptions to muscles. They always do the same. They always try to pull. But what happens if you want to move in the same direction as gravity, but you want to go faster than what gravity can offer? So in other words, if I had a mosquito on my leg, I wouldn't want to use my flexors to eccentrically lower my hand, right? I'd want to use my extensors to make my extension go faster than gravity. That would be through a concentric contraction. So those are the exceptions we're going to get to. What is that TheraBand trying to do to my subtalar and transverse tarsal joints? Inversion. It's an inversion puller. It's trying to invert me. Does everybody see that? So does it make sense? I always, not that you have to do it this way, guys. I just want right answers. I play process of elimination. That's how my brain works. I eliminate. If I know who it can't be, then I feel more comfortable knowing who it can be. If the TheraBand is trying to invert me, I don't need inversion pullers. I don't need muscles that are trying to invert me. Wouldn't that make sense? I would need eversion pullers, in this case, lateral pulling muscles. True? Now, who are those muscles? I'm going to teach you that, guys. I'm going to teach you about the peroneus tertius, longus and brevis, and extensa digitorum of the foot. But right now, it's the concept that I need muscles that pull in that direction of motion because this TheraBand is trying to move me the other way. We established our agonist in this exercise. Everters. So when I observe eversion, it's got to be through. That's right. Concentric, eccentric. Everters do eversion through concentrics. Everters do inversion through eccentrics. So where would that be? Concentric would be from left to right, because that's my eversion. Eccentric phase would be right to left, because that's when I observe inversion. Yes? do one more. Let's put a little hot sauce on this. Left leg, the one that's in the air. Gravity would be trying to do what to that hip? Flex. Now, he wants to keep that leg straight, right? So what group of muscles do you think he needs to recruit isometrically to make that leg stay in anatomical position? Flexion pullers or extension pullers? Outstanding. And then in biomechanics, we're going to say, well, who's on that team? Who are those muscles? And I'm going to teach you about the gluteus maximus and the semimembranosus, semitendinosus, biceps femoris. Long head is the only one that goes up into the hip. But for now, all of those words don't mean anything. They're just names. We have to start off by understanding why we need them to influence motion. Now, going down and coming up isn't going to be because of the left leg. The left leg is just going to kind of help stay rigid, to help our balance, to keep our center of mass over our base of support. The contraction and the agonist is going to be on the right leg, the right hip, because that's where we're going to have the motion, right? The flexion and the extension. You guys remember that on the first test? Okay. Does it make sense that this person has more stuff in the front of his hip than the back of his hip? So in other words, if he relaxes, he's going to flex. True? So what group of muscles would he need during this exercise? His right hip extensors. Just like you need your cervical extensors because gravity's trying to flex you, gravity would be trying to flex you because it's like a teeter-totter and there's more stuff on one end than the other. Does that make sense? So for this one-legged deadlift, we need right hip extensors. Now, when he goes down, what motion would we observe? I need extensors of my right hip, but when I go down, what motion do I observe when he goes down? Flexion. Extensors do flexion through eccentrics. Guys, there's no exception. That's just how muscles work. If you're like, I'm noticing a pattern, yes. Yes. Muscles can't push and pull. They can only pull. What about when he decides to come up? Different muscles or same muscles? Same muscles. Different contraction or same contraction? And what type of contraction would that be? Concentric. Outstanding. Isometric to hold the position, right? Concentric to come up, eccentric to come down. And the reason I wanted to end in one of these is because in an exercise, the first phase or the first motion isn't always concentric. Like you think about right? Like you take the weight off of the rack, and the first movement is eccentric. Not all exercises. Squat. You get off the rack, the first motion is eccentric. So we can't make these laws of well, when I'm doing an exercise, concentric comes in first. But what is consistent? What is that bar trying to do to my elbows? What is that bar trying to do to my shoulders? If it's trying to flex my elbows, I need extension pullers. If it's trying to horizontally abduct my shoulders, I need horizontal adduction pullers. If my elbows are in and it's trying to extend my shoulders, I need flexion pullers. That's what's consistent. And then once you identify your agonist, contraction is solved for. Contraction is proven. There's no guesswork. These muscle pullers do these specific motions through these types of contractions every day and on holidays and weekends. We're good? Practice. Practice. Go into that weight room that you guys paid for and practice. Go home and practice. Do what I do. Take some cans of corn. You don't have to have dumbbells. You get anything to be a weight. Practice.
Have a good one.